Hello there. I'm Francesca Pick, founding partner at Greaterthan. And in this episode of The How, I'm talking to Jojo Spinks, a community animator, speaker, and writer. This episode brings us to southwest England, to a place called Devon. And this is where Jojo's from, and for over the last decade has been doing some incredible work around local community engagement that has been so inspiring to me in terms of actually seeing an example of very grassroots and just authentic leadership in a way that is very participatory and really embraces shared leadership principles in a way that just sort of emerges and wasn't actually maybe planned to be so. So in this conversation, we talk about how Jojo came from her original work in archaeology into placemaking, and talk about the evolution of the organization she created called Interwoven, which is a network of volunteers that is engaged in their local communities and neighborhoods. And we talk about key inflection points of that organization, challenges in its development, and what were some essential turning points in it actually moving from being focused on the arts to actually supporting communities to take ownership of their own future, their own neighborhoods, and to shape them based on gift economy principles and many other interesting things. So throughout the conversation, we dive into something called the Squilometer, which is a really fun concept that she's developed that relates to a square kilometer of a neighborhood and has sort of a viral gift economy dynamic for how neighborhoods can animate their own places that you'll hear more about. We also unpack how the network evolved with this sort of very distributed leadership nature. We talk about her quiet voice methodology, which is a really, I think, quite groundbreaking and just really deep, interesting way of articulating how to actually approach community engagement. And towards the end of the conversation, we also talk about her own leadership journey and how she's looking at her succession process as being a leader who's getting towards the end of her career and wanting to pass on her network so that it can continue to grow and thrive for many years to come. So yeah, it's a real treat, this conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Thank you for listening. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Jojo. To this next episode of Greaterthan's podcast, The How. I'm super excited and looking forward to this conversation with you today, where we're going to be diving into the work that you've done over the years and really stay true to the intention of this season, which is really about reconnecting with people that I've encountered over my work over the years and really reflecting together, taking stock on important insights, lessons, growth, challenges. I'm really excited to diving into this. So who do I have here with me today? Just to give a brief introduction. Jojo Spinks, I've understood you used to be an archaeologist. Very interesting. And I guess quite early on, this was around in the 2013, 14, you were really bridging a couple different areas, such as the circular and gift economy, with how to then connect that with placemaking and creative connected placemaking. And then out of that, you created the Interwoven Network, which is a big network of volunteers that is doing placemaking. And I think, when one reads about you online, there's this really important essence, I feel, that pops out about what you do, which is connecting people to people and people to place, which I think is really, beautifully said. And so, I invited you here today because I've been very inspired by how you show up as a leader and how you've grown all of this work. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving in. How are you
Oh,
this morning, Jojo?
well, that's lovely. Yeah, no, I'm good this morning. I'm thrilled to bits to be here. I mean, it feels like, in terms of our past relationship, I mean, I sought you out in awe, Francesca. I saw your work. I came at it via Inspiral, in fact. I
Mm.
discovered that first. And yeah, when we had the opportunity to engage you through Greaterthan as a mentor, I mean, it was real buzz for me. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
Yeah, that's great. It's good that it's mutual, the adoration. And yeah, so I guess the first little thing that we always do here, which you've already started, which is great, which is just briefly, yeah, bringing all the listeners into how do we actually know each other? What is that relational fabric between us? And so, as you mentioned, we met through a mentorship relationship, which actually was part of the People and Place program of the Footwork Foundation in the UK, a really inspiring foundation. And so it's actually quite recent that we've been working together over the past year. And yeah, I've been able to dive deep into the Interwoven Network and the participatory practice and the community and how it's been developing. And yeah, trying to support in a really important transition moment or a transition phase that is coming up. Anything you feel like we should add about, yeah, for the listeners about our relationship and what we've done together?
Well, the truth is, I've been stalking you a lot longer than that. That's that's the truth. As I say, I was part of a podcast run by a really young, dynamic, socially engaged artist back in 2019 or something. I think it's a Onions talk, Fie Neo, and she travels the world interviewing change makers, just really trying to drill down into the relevance of arts to social improvement. And she interviewed ants at Inspiral, and that came out in 2020. And that's how I discovered Inspiral at the same time as I was researching participation and how participation could work. My focus at the time was less about network. I hadn't understood that really as well as working with you has allowed me to do. But I knew that participation was a really key term. And so I bought the book,
Mm-hmm.
Better Work Together, and I came across your article in it, which I think spoke to me out of I mean all of them were inspirational, but it really did speak to me. And this name, Francesca Pick, leapt off of the page, and I started following a lot of your other output, and so when we did get the opportunity to choose our own mentor, yeah, so you were definitely on my radar. So our relationship is older than the mentoring because I've been stalking you from behind.
Yeah. No, that's cool. It's good to trace it back. And yeah, I guess I'm really curious to trace things back a little bit for you and understand a little bit how did you actually get into this work? Like where does it start for you in terms of your curiosity, your development, your explorations, and yeah, how you actually ended up developing the interwoven network and the quiet voice methodology, which we'll also talk a little bit more about after that.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yeah, so the interwoven part came first. We were a performance production company back in 2012, 11, 12, a small company, tiny, the kind of company that comes together and doesn't have any money until they actually perform and somebody pays something on the door. But we were doing a Southwest tour and in Southwest England where I am. And we were just coming towards the end of that tour when my husband collapsed on the floor in front of me. And it was one of those moments that stops you think and makes you think about what you're doing. I mean, why were we on a yellow brick road, presumably to London? I don't want to go to London. I love Devon, where I am. I don't want to go to London. Why were we sort of after bigger and bigger venues on this must get bigger, must get better kind of thing? It really did make me stop. And so I actually stopped producing and writing and took an admin job so that I had brain left to do the research. So all the way through 2014, I just stopped and researched what would it look like if you brought creative placemaking using my landscape archaeology together with what I was learning at that time through Charles Eisenstein and Lewis Hyde, the Gift, who was one of the biggest influences on me at the time. What would happen if you brought those two together to do work that connected people to people and people to place? So goodness knows how really those threads came together, but they did, and that's where Interwoven became less, a lot less about performance and more about, connection.
And can you tell us a little bit about, how did Interwoven evolve? And I guess obviously there's like what it has turned into now. And I think I've always been really like impressed to see how it feels like this idea of participatory governance and shared leadership in like a very distributed, like super local grassroots way. It's just like deeply in the DNA of that network. And so I'm curious, like, how did that evolve? Like, was that clear to you from the beginning? Yeah, what does that look like? And
Yeah,
what happens in it?
the truth is there was a schism. There was a moment when we had to decide, is our purpose, our theory of change, are we about animating communities to become the agents of their own change? Or are we still a performance creative company where we've already kind of decided that what communities need are the arts? And more and more in my heart, I believed that the first was true, that the work that I wanted to do, that was meaningful to me, that I was building a network around, was around animating communities to empowering their own capabilities to make their own decisions about what that is. And if it didn't include the arts at all, then that's fine. And of course, the artists who come with us on the beginning part of this journey, that left them feeling, well, where does that fit in terms of my practice? I don't know where I fit anymore. So the truth is, there was an evolution, and it was painful. That was tough. That was a difficult process to go through.
Yeah.
But it was a really, really important part of defining the boundaries of what this network was about, and now come to understand that I've been active in defining the boundaries right from the very beginning, and even managing this significant change, because I was following what made me truly believe that this was a worthwhile endeavor. So,
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
no, I'm so sorry. I was just going to say that after that, things became a lot easier, though, in terms of finding the network and finding the other people who believed could align alongside this new vision, in which quiet voice methodology sits.
Yeah, so I was actually just going to say in connection to that it seems that then from that shift is when it really started flourishing and taking off. And I'd love to hear a little bit about also just for the listeners of like the Squilometer and what that is. And I think from there we can then go a little bit more into how that connects with the quiet voice methodology, which is so at the heart of what you've created here.
Yeah, and it is, but the truth is we didn't coin it as a term until quite recently. But what came first was the concept of the Squilometer. That's pure Lewis Hyde and the Gift. So Lewis Hyde describes in his really seminal work. I mean, it was back in the 80s, I think it was first published. extraordinarily sort of prescient piece of writing. But he describes how to bring community together. The gift needs to go from one part of the community to another, and it needs to be witnessed.
Mm.
So the gift needs to be contained within a, a knowable community. And that's how I came up with this idea of a squilometer, 1 square kilometer. And it's a bonkers word, and I keep thinking we should need to ditch it. But anyway, it's kind of stuck now.
Yeah,
And
for
there are
sure.
many, many squilometers now. So that essentially it's just a neighborhood of work. And what I thought was, well, what we could do is we could work hyper locally, one street at a time inside that neighborhood, so that they could do something, generate some resource, and then gift that to the next street in that neighborhood, around and around and around, inside one neighborhood, owned and led and designed, conceived, created, hosted by the residents who live there, so that we could have a kind of circular economy, in gifting economy inside a neighborhood that wasn't dependent on top-down funding. And that was the big sort of breakthrough, really. That was, when I think back, it's, well, as I look around now, it's still pretty out there. You know, I don't know of other
Yeah.
community endeavors that are working on community perpetual motion. So um, that's still there. So we have 6 squilometers now, and another one on the horizon, and and the oldest is now 10 years old. So it's been running on that community perpetual motion without massive funding from anyone, just through community voluntary networked participation. Um, which is, yeah, as I say it out loud, it's quite extraordinary to hear that. So we've been the stimulus of that activity without, slipping under the radar, with no real help or funding from any agencies at all.
Yeah. No, it's really, really amazing to see. And especially how like yeah, that you have these hyper local units, but then there's the network that sort of connects the people, and when they can then, yeah, share learning with each other and get that sort of umbrella support of the bigger thing that this is part of. So it's sort of like doing change in my own street for my own like square kilometer neighborhood, but also it's part of a bigger change. And I think that's a really interesting connection to make that probably also makes people feel even more like belonging and like energized.
Yeah, and that's something that I think we definitely have you to thank for. And one of us went along on the Thriving Networks Greaterthan course, which was incredibly useful for us to come to know ourselves as a network. I don't think we'd truly identified that being sort of all these participants doing things, and that these different neighborhoods could talk to each other. I don't think we'd really come to understand our role as a network until we'd done some work with Greaterthan. So I'm really, really grateful for that, because knowing it consciously and mindfully has meant that we could do things like have a big celebration event where we bring them from each of those neighborhoods together to see what each other are doing. And we're doing a lot more of that interconnection now between neighborhoods, so that they can learn from each other and talk to each other and actually help each other. So we have volunteers who go from one neighborhood to another. Um, I'd always assumed that people only would care about their own neighborhood, and it's not true. People really enjoy being part of a broader network.
Yeah.
That's been an
Mm.
evolution that's been
Yeah.
fantastic.
So I think before we go into a little bit more of the like nitty-gritty of lessons, challenges, insights, I think it would be great to just briefly share a little bit about the quiet voice methodology. Yeah, like how that originated, and I guess yeah, it got its name maybe later on, but it's been something that's quite deep in like your way of viewing the world is my impression. So find it very
It
interesting.
is, thank you. Yeah, no, it's really, really fundamental to that change that happened when we had that schism. And I knew that our purpose should be to animate people to be the agents of their own change, to enhance their capability. So the capability approach is a thing. It's one of the things that we were researching and trying to understand. And I knew that that was important. But what I was witnessing in the Squilometer work is one of the first things that people said is, well, why didn't you ask us what to do in our neighbourhood? And I was like, right, yes, from here on in, we definitely will. So we started forming pods, which is a group of local residents to help us reach their neighbours, because that's the easier way to do it. And then the other phenomenon that we notice, and anyone in community work will notice it, and I liken it to, it's a friend of mine gave me an ecological metaphor to describe it. When you start new work in a new place, um, they will be the first responders. They will be the people who will step up. Oh, bless you. They will be the people who come on board instantly, because they have the resources, the time, the confidence, the education, maybe the social capital to do so. And what can happen, and this here the ecological metaphor is, ecologically, when you clear a new space, birch trees will colonize very quickly, and birch trees are very beautiful, and they'll colonize very quickly, and they'll form quite a canopy, and they'll fill up the space, and you think, well, this is fantastic. We have success. We no longer have waste ground. And but of course, birch trees are not the only tree, she says. Stealing from oranges is not the only fruit. And because if you just let a little bit of light through, you will find the other voices, the other species, the lichen, the grass, the moss. And that's what quiet voice methodology does. It just just lets some light through, and holds it back so that you purposefully and mindfully start the conversations with the other species, with the other people who are finding it hard to find their voice, the quiet voices. So I don't like hard to reach, because that kind of like puts the blame on what's wrong with you? Why are you hard to reach? So we coined this new term, quiet voice, to
Yeah.
identify the methods and techniques that we use to mindfully move the canopy, let the light through, so that we can have those other conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it really interesting, like this mindset shift from hard to reach to the quiet voice. It really moves the center of attention elsewhere. And yeah, it seems like it enables a lot, that
Yeah,
shift.
it's part of the shift from engaging other people in your idea, to animation. So
Mhm.
you're animating them to develop their own ideas.
Yes, yes, right.
It's part of the shift from service provider to community empowerment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so in that sense, also then the people in the community, they're moving from consumer to co-creator in that,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
they're actually engaged and invited to yeah, be an agent of their own change, as you say.
And we're very aware that we're not completely alone in this. There's the New Citizenship Project with John Alexander, and of course asset-based community development speaks very strongly to this, with Cormac Russell and
Mm.
McKnight, the late John McKnight. So
Yeah, and so yeah, on that topic, I feel like that leads us a little bit into, I guess, zooming out a little bit and looking at how do you see this field overall having evolved over the years, right? Because you were saying like, ooh, it still seems quite edgy actually compared to what other types of initiatives are.
yeah,
And in connection to that, like, yeah, what are the challenges that you face that you still see? Yeah, how has that whole experience been?
yeah. What's the other thing that's been interestingly happening, and that you have also helped us with, is understand that there are authorities and other organizations out there who are tackling that birch tree issue. It's real, it's out there for almost anyone who wants to do community work. How do you find the people who really need it? And so we've been beginning um, to sell that, to sell the training, or to sell a commission essentially to go in and do that work in a place of deprivation, for instance. The challenge comes in that commission in designing and battling. So we almost lost a big commission because we dug our heels in and said that, the way you're asking us to evaluate this would get in the way of forming the relationships of trust that we need to do, or the way that you're planning to end this with an end date is going to damage those relationships and trust that are essential to quiet voice methodology. And we have to really negotiate with the people who want to work in this way to fit a new way of working and thinking, particularly in the local authority context. That's a real battle for us. They're clearly the potentially biggest commissioners for our work, but it's a behemoth. It's a big old construct in local government and local authority. They might have individuals who want to work in this way, but fitting it inside their systems is this constant clash, and we're still talking in a language in almost every way for them, in terms of the way that we operate economically, organizationally, and the quiet voice. It's all innovative as far as they're concerned.
Yeah. And so I guess obviously that's also made resourcing more difficult, I imagine, if there's that like disconnect or not quite the funders not understanding what this really is about and what the conditions are for it being successful.
Absolutely. We're still tiny and we're still working out, what is the appropriate way for some people who need to be paid. And I think we need more work to do on the money. And the money game, I think, is definitely something that we need to be looking at more. Yeah, we definitely haven't got all the answers about resourcing yet. It lies in our organizational form and the fact that we're brokering a great deal of voluntary participation. But there's no doubt that there are, a couple of central individuals, myself included, are doing an awful lot of work without remuneration, which is not very clever in the long term.
Yeah, well, it's a struggle for many organizations like this, for sure. And I guess I wanted to briefly come back to something you were mentioning that I thought was very interesting, because I also read that case study that you shared with me about the little hamsters, I think you were calling them. And the fact that how a lot of the local councils work with a clear end date, that's very problematic for like building up trust and people really investing, and how you've been able to navigate that. I thought maybe you could say a little bit about that, and how you've been trying to work with the constraints that are there by, I guess, hacking things as you can.
Yeah, I've been sort of putting it out there for quite some time. Is that projects, the whole concept of a project, and almost every funding application you sit down to do says describe your project. Well, it's a big problem because communities don't understand the concept of if you go into a community, particularly a quiet voice community that is not practiced in these things. You go into a community and you start building the kind of trust relationships and doing the proximity work, the legwork of the being there, coming to know them in the way that is needful for quiet voice methodology, and then say, right, it's all over, I'm off, we're done. Oh. It does huge damage inside community work. It does huge damage to us as interwoven workers. That's why the Squilometer was set up with that community potentialist. It need never end. Nobody can pull the funding end. So this shift to taking commissions to do similar types of work in a non-Squilometer context does raise this issue, because they want answers within a certain time frame, and that time frame is often completely nonsensical to the community that we're working with, and the idea that we would say that's it, we're over, we're gone, Is it's so one of the answers that we've come up with is to have a pod license. If we've formed a pod, one of these community groups in a particular place, then we will license them to work with us and continue. So, for instance, in Littleham, I still go once a month and get to have big hugs and cuddles, and we'd sit, and when I'm part of the work that they're continuing without the kind of input in terms of time and hours that I was doing before.
Yeah. Yeah. So that for you, the license, it's sort of like a small financial contribution to show that there's like a continuous value exchange, the relationship remains intact. It's like, yeah, a commitment to being in that network and continuing to support in some way.
Yes, yeah. Basically, it keeps them in the network,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it is a small amount. It's just something to help pay for the a little bit towards the hours that I would continue. But the important part of it is that it does keep them within the governance framework, so they can access.
Mm,
Uh, they can say, oh, yeah, or bank account, for instance, so that they can apply for funding,
yeah.
and it keeps them within this. But it's the belonging to a network, I think.
Mm,
That's the key thing that's really taken off in the last 18 months, 12
mm.
months.
Yeah, and obviously this distributed dynamic and the fact that it's gift economy, like, yeah, that's a real power there because as you said, it can't be shut down.
No,
And that's very powerful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And to think that was the first thing that we came up with, and quiet voice methodology came afterwards, and some of the other innovations, particularly about organizational form, came afterwards.
Mm,
But I don't think we could have built the rest without that fundamental sustainability that was built into the circular um, view of money inside a neighborhood,
mm.
thanks to Lewis Hyde. So I still, for all the things that I've read, I still put him up there as one of the strongest influences on what we do.
So in the last few minutes that we have, I'd really love to talk a little bit about your journey as a leader. It's something I'm very interested personally, as I go through all my own leadership challenges and struggles. And yeah, I guess I'd just love to hear a little bit about how do you see your evolution in that regard? What have maybe been some things you've had to overcome, things that have been unexpected, and also as you now look into the future and this vibrant community that you have that you want to continue to thrive. Big
Yeah.
question, but yeah.
Yeah, because I mean you're quite right. It's taken me a while to get to this point. So I'm in my 60s now. I'm looking at potentially retiring, and I would dearly love for this to continue, and to be able to continue without me. And that was a real, oh, how did we work that through? So again, it was a focus of the mentoring that we've been having, which was one of the biggest sort of light bulbs in the whole journey when you introduced me to the concept of source. And I came to understand, and I ordered the book working with source, and I came to understand that, yeah, I clearly was the source of the interwoven endeavor. I'd clearly been defining and holding boundaries for it and inviting people in, and been excited about the way in which they might want to interact inside that field, that creative field of what interwoven is. Um, and I got some things right in doing that. I got some things right. Uh, it was obviously the creative divide that was painful, and I still feel the pain of that. And I don't know, I'm still processing what I learned from that. I think I was right to hold to what I believe as source, and that does help me there a little bit to understand my role as source, is that it was my purpose to hold the boundaries and the definition of what we do. So that gave me permission to do that a little bit,
Hmm.
because I think, like many people who run this kind of thing, they don't want to be the big boss of everything. And my whole work is about empowering other people to do that. So I felt that conflict.
Yeah.
Have all along felt that conflict. How can I invite people in to do things with me without being the boss of them?
Mm.
Um, the source concept really, really helped me with that. And it gave me a little bit of permission to say, well, no, this is the boundary.
Mm.
Anything inside, let's play.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we're about creating art as our primary mission anymore.
Mm.
Um, and now I'd like to step back, and we're having those conversations about succession. I feel more confident now. We're not completely there. In
Mm.
fact, we had a board meeting and we realized that actually in the last 12 months I've taken on more instead of less. So we're not going in the right direction, but we do have a bit of a plan forming, and we are openly talking about it. But it's been really, really useful to talk to you and connect with other people in a similar setting and know that I'm not alone with this. When you've started something, how do you let it go?
Yeah. Not an easy task. But it's it's been really great to see that the little part of the journey that I've been part of, and yeah, that like looking ahead and trying to be intentional about how to do a succession and allow the project to continue on and thrive. So yeah, we're gonna keep following that. And I guess so. Um, to slowly close us off, I'd love, like, really, I guess a bit maybe I'm speaking to you almost as an elder in this question, which is like if you think about those people who still have many years ahead in their work, and obviously it's a very intense moment to be in the world, I think, for a lot of us, wondering what is it that we should be dedicating ourselves to, like what really matters, right? As you were saying, this moment with your husband, like helping you realize what really matters. I just would love to hear what you have to share as advice, or what are you sensing in terms of what the world needs right now, or where we should be putting our energy.
Yeah, no, I do, and I think that's why I've been holding true to the boundaries of what Interwoven does. I truly believe that we need to empower our communities to take action and look after each other. That true political social power lies inside the communities themselves, not top down, because a lot of what's coming from top down is clearly bonkers. But what can grow from bottom up, and really enhancing and throwing a spotlight on the social networks that are actually already there. We often disrupt them with service provision. I think we can turn that upside down, and we can nurture and hold many of the social networks that fit inside our communities, and promote and enhance those capabilities for people to look after themselves, and 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 only reach for service provision where it's appropriate. Uh, and yes, I truly do believe that's the focus of energy, where it should lie.
Yeah, supporting local communities to be able to support themselves, to
Yes.
create, yeah, to be the agents of their own change. It's great that that still feels so alive and relevant. And I think that yeah, that motivates me to continue on this endeavor as well, and I hope many others as well that are listening.
Yeah, I think it's
Anything?
even more so, isn't it? It's even more so as global events take.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we're almost ready to close. I just wanted to give you the mic if there's anything else you'd like to share before we close, anything important that maybe you haven't brought in yet, a note to leave us on.
A note to leave you on. Well, huge thanks and gratitude for all of the people and the inspirations that are out there, and it's just the recognition that we know, as much as other people see us as really innovative, actually I can see the broader global network that we're a part of people who are talking about systems change. People are talking about the different way of doing it. So I just feel hugely grateful and want to reflect that back, that it's important. It's important to keep having these conversations and providing places where someone who, most of the conversation I have are about, oh, that's a bit different. So lovely to restful to be in a conversation where actually it fits.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jojo. It's been lovely to talk. I hope this sparks things for people, ideas, to also look further into Interwoven in your work. I'll also put some links alongside this this podcast and video. And I think with that, I wish you a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.